Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all the listeners of our Leaders Talk segment. I'm Shweta, the consulting editor of the CSR Universe, and I'm joined by our editor, Ruchika Kumar. Today is an exciting day for us, as we will be getting to know about the ways in which one of the largest organizations in the world designs and implements their social initiatives to build resilient communities across the globe. We are talking about the InCommunities program of Amazon Web Services. The flagship program of the company has been designed to create a lasting positive impact around the world, especially in the regions that they operate in. The program focuses on a range of impact areas that include STEAM education, equity and access, local tech upskilling, and environmental stewardship. Employee engagement is an aspect that is equally integral to the program. They have undertaken multiple initiatives in India as well, where they operate 2 data center infrastructure regions. One is in Mumbai and the other one is in Hyderabad. It's my privilege to introduce our guest for this episode, Ms. Cornelia Robinson. Cornelia is the global leader of the InCommunities program, Amazon Web Services. Her expertise lies in using technology to solve problems and creating opportunities for people in underserved communities. She has a background in education and social impact, and she's a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion. So without any further delay, let's get on with this discussion. Cornelia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So first of all, let's begin with a brief background of the InCommunities program. How was it? How did it start? How was it conceptualized? And how has it grown over the years?
Thanks for the introduction. AWS InCommunities is our infrastructure community engagement program for AWS's cloud infrastructure. So when you think about AWS InCommunities, the N is short for infrastructure. So when we think about our cloud infrastructure, AWS has data centers all over the world. And we want to make sure that in those places where we're building and operating, that we're being very intentional about having a positive impact in the local community. And as you mentioned in the intro, we have 4 different areas. The first is STEAM education and making sure that we are providing access and equity in education for students. The second is local tech upskilling. We've worked with different colleges, universities, community colleges, junior colleges around the world to make sure that we're creating upskilling opportunities, as well as looking at trade schools, working with trade schools, and even non-traditional paths into tech. So in many communities where perhaps tech hasn't necessarily been, there hasn't been a strong tech industry, making sure that we're creating skilling programs and pipeline programs so that local community members can become a part of the tech community and have an opportunity to move into tech as a potential career opportunity. And then environmental stewardship is a big focus for us, as well as overall take on a cause. And so take on a cause is the way that we engage our employees, and we really follow their lead, and they come up with different types of opportunities that they're interested in, problems that they see in their local communities where they say, hey, I want to get involved in this way. And they bring their fellow employees along. They volunteer, they make different donations and contributions in their local communities. So those are our 4 areas of giving. And AWS InCommunities is a global program. So we're active in all of our cloud infrastructure regions around the world.
When did the program begin? Could you give us some?
So yeah. The program began in 2018.
In
and
India.
It's been growing strong since 2018.
All right. So could you tell us, like, what is the underlying approach? Say when you begin your program in a particular location, when you're starting out, what does the process look like? You can explain it with an example, like when you started your program in India, how do you do, say, a needs assessment? Or how do you identify the projects to take up, or your implementation partners? Yeah, just a brief. We'll be getting into the details as the interview progresses. But
yeah. Okay, happy to do that. So very similar to what you just described, we try to make sure that we always do a needs assessment. In Amazon, we have a process that you may have heard of called a working backwards process. And so in this context, we work backwards from our customer. Our customer is the community. So if we're going to build our cloud infrastructure or operate our cloud infrastructure in a particular location, we want to make sure that we're engaged with the community early on, that we understand the challenges of that particular community, the ways of working in that particular community. We sit down with community members, with stakeholders, with officials, with nonprofit organizations, and get a lot of different information from those organizations. And then we also crosswalk that with the ways in which AWS feels like it can make a positive impact as an organization. And so through the years, we've done this in a lot of different ways. An example that comes to mind is out in Eastern Oregon, where we're working with farmers. And with the farmers, we actually are recycling water from our data centers and providing that water for the farmers to use in their day-to-day operations. And so, you know, every community is different. I can think about in Virginia, when we initially started doing work there, we sat down with a local school district, and we got an understanding from the students, from the teachers, from parents, from administrators, from different foundations to understand what their needs were, what students' interests were. And what came up over and over again was students had an interest to get hands-on experience in the area of STEM education, which we expanded to STEAM, which also incorporates the arts. Educators wanted an opportunity to engage with professionals who were doing the work because they're trying to teach students about careers that they haven't necessarily had themselves. They're trying to teach students how to work with technology that they maybe didn't necessarily understand themselves. And so that's how we also came up with a Think Big concept. So our Think Big spaces that we were able to launch, it really came out of initial conversations where we're doing that needs assessment to understand what would be pertinent for a particular community, and then making sure that we put what we're learning into play, again, working backwards from our community members to come up with solutions that help them.
You started working in India in 2018. I mean, that's when Amazon started its business. Amazon Web Services started working in India, right? So what are the focus areas in India as of now? Or what are the projects that you have, the major projects that are ongoing in India?
So our AWS InCommunities program was established in India in 2018.
Right.
And we've been present from an infrastructure location in India since 2016. So if we take a step back and look at India as a whole for AWS's cloud infrastructure, we have two regions. We have Mumbai, which is our first region, established in 2016, and then we have Hyderabad, which is our second region, established in 2022. And you know, from the early days of our established presence in both of these regions, we've done the same thing, which is make sure that we do the needs assessments, that we sit down with students, that we sit down with teachers, that we engage with officials. Really the process that I described that we do overall in every location globally, that's what we've been able to do right here in India.
All right. Could you elaborate a little more on your Think Big Spaces program? I mean, did you have to adapt it in any way in India? Because this is a different region and the needs are different. So,
absolutely.
Yes.
With our Think Big Spaces, we leverage the global programming, but then we make it very specific to the community. India is actually the only place in the world, for example, where we implemented a mobile Think Big space. So we have a Think Big space that's on wheels, and we take the curriculum out to students in more rural communities who may not be able to get to the schools where we've put the Think Big spaces in place. And so we're able to work with educators and students and parents as well in these communities through the Think Big, through the mobile Think Big spaces. We also just announced our 20th physical Think Big space in India. And so I was in Thane just 2 days ago where we inaugurated, it's the 20th Think Big space in India, the 12th Think Big space in the Mumbai area. And we started with Think Big spaces in Navi Mumbai. And then something else that we've been able to incorporate is STEAM corners. So a school may not have a complete space that they can dedicate to the Think Big program. And when that's the case, what we do is we'll create these corners and have a pantry. And the pantry has different equipment and curriculum that students can come and they can tinker and they can learn, guided, of course, by their teachers. So we're providing equity and access in education in the STEAM programming for these students. And we're trying to do this at scale, right? So a lot of this work has happened pretty quickly. So by having these different models, we're able to meet students and meet communities where they are, as opposed to just focusing, on one particular model that works for everybody, because we know that that doesn't work for everybody.
Did you have to train the teachers in India? Before implementing the program in your schools, is there any kind of training that the teachers are given?
There's training with teachers, and we also work with a non-government organization, nonprofit organization called the Learning Links Foundation, and this is a specialty for them. And so we've worked in collaboration with them to scale the Think Big program across our regions, our cloud infrastructure regions in India. And so they work hand in hand with the schools, with the educators, and the teachers also receive continuous training through the program.
I think Ruchika had a question.
Yeah. So I wanted to know, working in a complex country like India, you also have to face a lot of regulatory and bureaucratic hurdles. So how has AWS managed to navigate through these kind of challenges? Since you said that you've been working with the local authorities also, engaging with them. So did you face any kind of challenges there?
So we always ensure that we're working in compliance with any regulation, that first and foremost, and then we strive to go above and beyond. So with this work, we're not working towards regulatory compliance, even though we're working in compliance. The programs that we implement and that we institute in India are a part of our ethos and our belief that we should give more to communities. We should make a positive impact in communities where we have a presence, where we live and where we work and where we raise our families around the world. And so ultimately, operating in that ethos and with that ethos in mind ensures that, number one, we are compliant, but number two, that we're all about making a difference and showing up over and over and over again, developing relationships, coming up with innovative ways to make an impact, and also encouraging and empowering communities to join us in that innovation.
Okay, so just one more question, Shweta. So Cornelia, you've had your experience working in, globally. So how is it different for working in the social sector area in India vis-a-vis other countries?
So, when I think about working in India versus working in other countries, there are a lot of differences, and then at the same time, there are a lot of similarities. Again, going back to the notion of starting with the community and working backwards from the community, we've been able to create different solutions. Like during the time of COVID in India, we worked with hospitals in Hyderabad. We built oxygen centers to make sure that people who were dealing with the effects of COVID-19 were able to receive the support and the treatment that they needed, that the hospitals were able to provide the support that they needed to provide to the community. Building libraries and infrastructure, ensuring that the community has access to resources that they may not have had access to. As we moved into the community. And so all of those things, some of those programs are very unique to India, but we try to implement that model regardless of where we're working in the world.
But we must have noticed some key differences. If you could just, highlight those, like how are we different in terms of a social sector?
You went out just a little bit there, Rishika, but I think you were asking me to highlight some of the differences
Yes.
that I see in India. So, some of those differences come back to the infrastructure and opportunities to contribute to the infrastructure in India, where we have our cloud infrastructure, creating more upskilling programs. Something that comes to mind for me is in Mumbai, in Navi Mumbai, we actually worked with Concern India Foundation and built out a skill center that's focused on helping women become entrepreneurs and also develop different skills around textiles, sewing, helping women establish different types of skills that will ultimately enable them to support their community and support their families. And so something that really stands out to me is some of the intergenerational learning that you see as a result of these programs, where you have students who are participating in the Think Big programs, and then you have their parents, mothers in particular, who are participating in the skills program. I sat down with one of the mothers on a previous trip, and she was showing me some of the advertisements that she had come up with because she was learning marketing skills through the program. And so she had developed different ads that she was distributing in the community to support the business that she was building. And then her child was helping, and her child was helping her with the technology aspects and with the word processing and things of that sort. So being able to see the multi-generational learning is actually something that I think has, in my experience, been unique to India. And then also the infrastructure improvements that we're able to make in collaboration with communities in India has also been unique.
Also, Cornelia, India has a mandated CSR framework. Like we follow a mandated CSR, the corporates. So has it been different for you working with corporates in India, with the social sector stakeholders in India vis-a-vis other countries?
From my understanding, India is the only country in the world that has the CSR requirement. And in terms of the question of difficulty, this goes back to the notion that this is a part of how we operate already. It's a part of the way in which we build and operate our cloud infrastructure around the world. And so we do ensure that we're always operating in compliance. And, for us, because it's a part of the ways in which we've decided as an organization to make contributions, it means that it's just who we are here in India too. So regardless of whether there was a regulation, this is how we show up as an organization over and over again, because a part of the way that we approach our work, it's about earning the trust of community because we are a part of the community. These are the places where our employees live. These are communities where our employees have deep roots that they care about. And so we're able to show up, and our employees are motivated by the fact that they get to be decision makers. They're stakeholders. I got a chance to talk with employees earlier this week about, why this work matters to them. And what they said is that they think it's amazing that they have an opportunity to sit at the table and help determine how we're going to make contributions based on their learnings, based on what they know about communities. So it's not something that's just, oh, well, we implement programs that are just in place around the world, but our employees really guide a lot of what we do here. And so it inspires and empowers them as well, and they feel so deeply connected to it.
Thank you so much, Cornelia. Over to you, Shweta.
Cornelia, I was personally very intrigued by the term STEAM education, because see, in countries like India, we lay a lot of emphasis on STEM disciplines. So is there any particular effort or measures that you're taking to incorporate the arts in your Think Big Spaces programs? Because I know people generally understand the significance of STEM disciplines, but arts is ignored. So, yeah.
Right. A lot of people think that it's really binary, right? So it's either you're in science and technology, engineering, math, or you're in the arts. And those terms are a lot of times used as polar opposites. But what we know is that there's a thread of consistency through STEM and with the arts. And so trying to make that connection more obvious to students is a part of the way that we ensure that we're providing more access and more equity in education. Because you don't have to pick either or, you can do both. You should do both. Our best technologists are also extremely creative. So even if you think about the process of working backwards, you can't truly work backwards if you're not also being creative and innovative. So with the students going through our Think Big programs, with our Girls Tech programs, we focus on creative design, right? So they're thinking through the elements of design. They have workshops, classes that they take around creative design, and they're engaged in prototyping. How can you come up with prototypes if you're not being extremely creative? And everything doesn't have to look the same. So they'll come up with prototypes. They're designing robots. They're coming up with different machine learning solutions, but all of those things that they're doing, they're incorporating the arts, with coding, experiential design and thinking, all of that incorporates the arts. And so we don't necessarily delineate it as much as we try to show how the arts is integrated in everything they do. And that way, even if a student says, hey, I'm interested in arts, it's like there's arts in science, there's arts in technology.
I also came across something called hyperlocal programs on your website. So could you just, in short, just explain what these are, what this approach means, and if you have an example, you can share it with us of hyperlocal programs.
Sure. So hyperlocal, it's essentially what we talked about earlier, where you're looking at a particular geography and saying what's really unique to that geography that may not be something that's consistent in other places. And so this is where our employees a lot of times are also helping to guide the work that we're doing. So something that comes to mind for me is in Hyderabad, where we're planting 6,000 local species of trees. That's an example. In Mumbai, that's an example of our hyper local work.
Right. You just spoke about trees. So you also are very active in the environment space. I mean, very particular. And it's something that no corporate can ignore. So what are the steps that you are taking in India towards environment preservation or restoration?
Yeah, taking a step back, AWS has a goal to ensure that our operations are running on 100% renewable energy by 2025. And so we are taking sustainability very seriously. We also have a goal to be water positive by 2030. And water positive means that we're contributing more water than we're consuming. And so those goals are very important to us as an organization. We've made big, bold commitments in this respect for AWS overall. And so when we think about how that translates to some of the work we're doing in India, we have things like the tree plantations. We have a collaboration with water.org, and we've been able to work on microfinance loans where people have benefited from this collaboration and been able to install water pipe connections and toilets and things of that sort in the local communities across multiple states in India. And then we also have utility scale projects in India that are bringing Amazon's renewable energy to the country. And so we're really excited about the ways that this is able to power more than 950,000 average size households annually in large metro areas like New Delhi.
Right. When you're implementing your program, say in India, I know that there are a lot of infrastructural hurdles that come. Many places don't have electricity connections, and we have poor internet connectivity in many areas. And, how do you address these challenges, especially when you're working in rural areas or the outskirts? Because these would be coming up.
So, when we move into a particular region, those are things that at times we're having to build. We're having to put in place the infrastructure for things like mobile phones or internet. And the thing that's great about it is the communities also get a chance to benefit from the infrastructure that we're building. And I've seen that in real life. Had an opportunity to talk with our engineers about the work that they're doing and the ways that the communities benefit from the infrastructure that we're building.
I wanted to ask another question about your NGO or implementation partners. You would be working with a lot of local organizations. So are there any specific criteria that you follow when you are choosing a partner? Do you expect them to fulfill certain requirements?
Absolutely. So we work with organizations like the Learning Links Foundation on our Think Big Spaces and on programs like AWS Girls Tech Day. We work with organizations like Concern India Foundation on the implementation of the community centers that we talked about and doing skilling, upskilling, reskilling, and entrepreneurship programs for women in our cloud infrastructure locations. And when we think about how we work with these organizations and identify these organizations, first, we have to make sure that they're a legitimate concern, that they've done work in the particular geography that we're working in. So it's not necessarily, just the biggest name, but it's organizations that have deep impact in the communities where we're also wanting to make a positive impact. And so there's the vetting of those organizations. We want to know that they've worked with similar sized organizations or larger organizations, and that they have a track record of success, that they're financially sound, that they're stable organizations. And then we develop the relationships on an ongoing basis. We evaluate to make sure that they're doing impact reporting. And so we develop the relationships over time, but we always start by doing that investigation, essentially, to make sure that it's a good fit when we see that we want to contribute in a certain way. We have to also find the right organization to collaborate with.
So, Shweta, can I ask something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Cornelia, you were talking about impact. So, in terms of measuring the impact, do you follow any methods, any qualitative or quantitative measures or methodologies that you can, shed light on?
I won't get into detail on some of the ways that we're tracking impact, but we absolutely do look at the numbers of students who participate in programs. We're looking at our volunteers who are participating, volunteer hours. We're looking at the students who are going through these programs. They're participating in national competitions and statewide competitions. We're looking at even introducing international competitions. We're looking at connecting students across the world. So trying to make sure that we're expanding our impact and our reach, and then looking at the baseline, so where the students start, and then ultimately how they're progressing year after year through the programs that we're developing. Those are some of the things that we're looking at as we implement and expand the programs.
Can you share, maybe an approximate number of beneficiaries that you've reached out to, the kind of impact that you've made?
So we don't actually break out the numbers in that way. But as I mentioned, our goal is to make positive impact and deep impact in the places where we have our cloud infrastructure.
All right. Thank you, Cornelia.
Of course.
Thank you, Shweta.
Cornelia, now we're actually coming towards the end of the interview, but about the employee engagement aspect, how do you engage? How do you exactly align your employees' vision with the global vision of AWS? Because the organization has one vision and employees would be having their own passions or probably connections with their area. So how do you align both of them?
So we make sure that they're interconnected. And I would say that really they're not necessarily distinct. Our employees and our company, have a deep care and concern for community. We consider AWS as a part of the community because we've got physical cloud infrastructure in these communities, and our employees are a part of the community because they work and they live and they raise their families in these communities. And so they are truly integral to how we show up and how we guide. They help guide our investments. We have employee ambassadors who are very active. They represent different areas of the business. They do this in conjunction with their day-to-day work. They tell us what's going well. They tell us what could be better. They evaluate our programs. They tell us the types of programs that they'd like to see us getting involved in even more. And they also tell us what they'd like to do. And then we are able to leverage AWS's scale, AWS's reach, and we're able to support them in doing the things that they want to do. So one example that comes to mind for me is our safety team. Our safety team, they use the safety skills that they're implementing at work, and they take them into the community, and they've come up with different safety training, safety talks and workshops that they give to women and children. They've done workshops on kitchen safety, on first aid, and they've committed to doing at least one safety workshop per month. And that was employee initiated, where they said, hey, we do this every day. Why not do it in the community as well? And so we're really excited about that. We have employees who have recently identified 2 different parks, and they've gone out and done, because they know that children deserve a safe place to play. And so they've done these park cleanups. But that's employee initiated work. That's not us saying, hey, go find something to do. That's employees coming to the table and saying, we see a problem, we want to go do this thing. And so that's the way that our employees show up over and over again. And then of course, they also participate in things like class chats. They engage with our students in the Think Big spaces. We had a lot of employees who were present just a couple of days ago when we inaugurated our Think Big space in Kane. And so our employees are extremely active. And as I mentioned earlier, this is work that they feel is motivating and exciting, and they're happy to be a part of it.
Cornelia, Amazon is synonymous with basically the most advanced technologies and innovations. So how does this translate into your social endeavors? How do you use technology? I mean, of course, it's a very broad question, but if you could maybe give an example, or do you plan to use any new technologies that you have in the pipeline in your social initiatives in the near future?
Yeah, we utilize all kinds of technologies, and also we are enabling our customers through the use of our technology for things like disaster response and crises around the world. Our customers are deploying the use of our technology, and in our communities with our community engagement through AWS InCommunities. Also, a lot of it comes back to how we even think about the innovation around technology. And so when we talk about things like thinking big and our Think Big spaces, that's all about getting students to think creatively, getting students to think about real world problems and to solve, to be problem solvers, to be innovative, solution oriented individuals utilizing technology, utilizing the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning, to come up with solutions, to quickly iterate on those solutions, to deploy them at scale. That's what AWS is about. And so we also want to make sure that we're creating these critical thinkers in students who are able to rapidly come up with different innovations. And so it's a part of an ecosystem of creative thinking and problem solving, utilizing technology.
I remember seeing an announcement about a competition in Mumbai in which 50 students from schools had made some kind of prototypes, and it was wonderful. I think this was about 2 months back, and I don't know, you might be aware of it, of course. So this was a competition in Mumbai. Anyway, it just came to my mind. Okay.
And we have you may have heard of the Science Carnival. That's one of our programs.
I think that was the contest I was talking about. Yes.
That's right. And so this year we actually had 12,000 students participate in our Science Carnival. And it has been a flagship program. It started in the Navi Mumbai area. And through this program, we have students who are at the forefront of innovation. They are competing across the country, and they are winning all sorts of prizes. They're winning competitions, and sitting down and talking with these students, I mean, they will blow your mind with the way that they're thinking about and solving problems utilizing technology. It's pretty incredible.
So hope that this program, you expand your footprint, at least with this program. I mean, schools need it. So coming to the end of the interview, Cornelia, would you like to give us a sort of roadmap of what Amazon AWS InCommunities plans to do in the near future, say 1 to 2 years? How does it look like? Are you looking at expanding in geographies or focus areas in any way?
Yeah, if we think about AWS's planned investment in India, we've made a commitment to making investments of $12.7 billion through 2030. And that's with our cloud infrastructure. And that's estimated to contribute $23.3 billion to the GDP of India. And as we make these investments, we also plan to increase our scale, increase the ways in which we are able to go deep and make a positive impact in these communities where we build and operate our infrastructure. And so I would say that we're really just at the beginning of the innovation and the work that we're doing with communities, in collaboration with communities in terms of working backwards from these communities. I'm excited about the path forward and the work that we're going to continue to do, working hand in hand. And it's all about collaboration and innovation, but it starts with the community, and we follow them and they help guide and direct us. And so when I think about the roadmap and what lies ahead, the sky is really the limit. And I'm just excited to be on this journey with AWS.
Wonderful. I mean, thank you so much for joining us today, Cornelia. It was wonderful to talk to you, and it was an insightful discussion.
Likewise, really appreciate your time and your questions, and excited for what's to come.
Sure. Thank you.